3, hit it!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And if you're a fan of these weekly bite-sized nuggets, and you want to go deeper, then I encourage you to check out the Inner Circle Platinum at michaelneill.org. And it's our all-inclusive membership where you get a couple of monthly webinars with me, you get a couple of exclusive videos, and you get access to pretty much every program that I do online included in your annual membership. So you can check that out. And today, what I wanted to talk about was, it kind of came from an experience I had. I was in London recently, and I was working with a small group, and it was a really beautiful experience. And we all, if you've ever, you might have the experience from seminars you've been on, you might have the experience sometimes, you know, on a holiday with somebody that you love. You might have the experience sometimes even listening to these podcasts where you find yourself settling. You find yourself dropping out of your thinking, dropping into just a really nice feeling. And life looks kind of simple, and you feel really good. And then inevitably at some point, and this is what started happening in the group, you start to think about, yeah, well, this is great, but what's going to happen when I get back to reality? What's going to happen when I go home and back to my real life? And that's a question that's come up so many times in groups over the years that I almost have a sort of a stock set of answers to it, but for whatever reason, this time I heard it differently. And when people said, yeah, what's going to happen when I get back to reality, when I get back to my real life, I realized, oh my gosh, we've all got that wrong. Because in that moment, reality, our real life was in the room with each other, in the feeling that we were all in the quiet that we were all enjoying. And what we were calling reality, what we were calling real life, was made of thought. It was an imagined future where things weren't as good as our real present. And it brought up that knowing that we're made for what is. We're not really made for what isn't. We're made to handle real problems. We're not really made to handle imaginary problems because they keep morphing and changing because we're imagining them. And so if we solve that one in our mind, we'll come up with a new one. In fact, that's one of the ways that I define a real problem, is a real problem has a solution. An imaginary problem just tends to breed more problems because it's not what is. And I was talking to somebody about this after the trip, and they said, well, no, I mean, what is, and then they started listing all the things they remembered about their life back home and all the things they were imagining about what was going to happen if and when. And I invited them back to reality, back to the space we were in, the conversation we were having. And to notice that in the actual reality of, like right now, your reality is whatever else is going on. I know part of your reality is you're listening to this podcast. Now, you might be listening to it in bed, in the shower, driving to work, at work, on a walk. But that's reality. And whatever imaginary future or remembered past you're thinking about in your head, the only bit of that that's part of what is that you're thinking about it in your head. What if you were only responsible for what is? What if you could be happy with what is? Because most of the time, what is pretty nice. There aren't usually a lot of problems with what is. There's an infinite number of problems with what you think is coming and what you think has been. But if you really kind of just notice what is right now, not in your head, but right now, where you are sitting now, then you notice that what is probably pretty good, and if it isn't, you can probably do something about it. And you'll also notice that your brain wants to leap back into what isn't, or forward into what isn't. But what if you were really only responsible for what is? What if getting back to reality was dropping out of your imagined futures and remembered pasts and coming back into this very moment, showing up fully wherever you are and seeing what happens? And what we saw in the room, what I've experienced for myself, what my friend that I was talking to began to notice, is that when we recognize we're only responsible in the moment for what is, and in a future moment, then if there's something else going on, we can take responsibility for that. And if there's something for us to do, we can do it. And if there's nothing for us to do, we won't. That actually life is pretty gorgeous most of the time, and we are more than up for the challenge. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk with you soon.